Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by the good brother Lenard Williams. Now, I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but I have a new tradition. One is I shamelessly plug my own podcast in my chapter all the time, dropping links. But then also I want to start a new tradition of interviewing any brother from our chapter that has been awarded the prestigious Brother of the Year award, because I think that they have quite the story to share. I did it with Brother Mark Peters. And so now we have my second installment of the Brother of the Year kind of series. So before we go into the questions, Brother Lenard, why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Lenard Williams, born and raised in the DC metropolitan area. Software developer, been doing that for, 12 years now. Did my undergrad schooling at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Then I got my master's in computer science at North Carolina State University. Started working from there. Pledged fall 2009 through the Theta Rho Lambda chapter, which I'm currently a member of. Phil's a member of as well. And just, been active.
There you go. I like that. Yeah. And I like that. You just already said that. You're like, I have to break. Like, let's already go right there. It's like, and I've been active. So that means that you are an active participant, even in the many years that you have, after crossing the burning sands, as they say, you've been an active member coming on 9 years. And so maybe taking us back to your journey, because, when it started, when you were growing up, did you have mentorship, or how did that kind of spark the interest in being an alpha man?
So I don't like to correct the host. It's 11 years, but it's all
good.
11.
Oh my goodness. Quick math. You can't quit. Dog.
I don't like to correct the host. So repeat your question again.
No, just when did it start with you? When did this like, mentorship when you were a kid? When did you start seeing alpha men, in your life?
The crazy thing is coming up. I mean, I don't have a story being young and there's an alpha man.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those stories. My father and my grandfather were probably the top two, and still are like the top two most important male figures in my life. My grandfather passed away many years ago, but my father is definitely the number one most important male figure in my life. So I didn't have any, necessarily men that were alphas that I had looked up to. I really got my first experience of a man, alpha man, when I got to UMBC, which is University of Maryland, Baltimore County for short. That's when I first got my, experience of like Greek life. And UMBC isn't an HBCU, so, the Greek life isn't, it's Greek life, but it's not HBCU Greek life, not Howard, Hampton, A&T, So from that standpoint, I guess it was kind of good, because being at UMBC, that's a small school. The Black community has to be, kind of close. Everybody says what's up to everybody, because it's not a lot of us, really. I mean, I thought it was a lot of us, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't really a lot of us.
Yeah, that's that PWI experience. I can identify with that in JMU. Right. It's like you think in your bubble, but when you really look at the grand scheme, it's not a lot of people of color at these predominantly white institutions.
Right. So my first experience with Greek life was actually with Sigmas. Cool guys. They were my friends, definitely cool guys and everything. Went to their parties, hung out with them or whatever. And then, the Alpha started doing, they were always there. But they started, Alpha Week came, they started doing these programs. They was always dressed up and everything. And so I was like, okay. And the programs had, real meaning. It wasn't like they was just, they were putting together a week's worth of programs just to put them together. Like, if you would have went to like a Sigma event, it'd have been meaningful, but or even others, I don't want to just, put them out there, but some other, organizations, you go to the event, some of them can come across as if they're just checking boxes. And I didn't feel that way with,
Mm-hmm.
the alphas. So, that's when I really started doing my research, with, alphas and what they were about and everything. So that's really when my first interaction was with alphas. And then, I went to NC State.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Oh, well, first, let's rewind back. In college, I did a program. I was in En-ROADS. And for those who aren't familiar with En-ROADS, it's basically a program that, how do I summarize it? It takes minorities and puts them in positions within companies to go, while they're in college. So internships, things like that. It does a lot more than that. We had a bunch of training and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I was able to get an internship with IBM. The deal was I had to go through En-ROADS in order to be at IBM for the summers. And so down there, I met a lot of people who were in En-ROADS, and then come to find out they were alphas.
There you go.
So, we just kicked it. I hung out with them just at, random things and stuff. And like, we were just friends, it wasn't all about, he ain't a bruh. Like, if we're all around all of our friends,
there you go.
Friends, you get a lot. Some people who are Greek will just be like, it's all Greek, like if you're not Greek, if you're not in their organization, you're like treated underneath them. And then when their bros are around or when their sorors are around, it's kind of like you're treated like a second class tier citizen. I didn't feel like that. It wasn't like I was trying to be all in the middle,
I see what you're saying. It was like,
when we out, right?
Like your identity. Like you're talking about their identity wasn't just solely like, I'm like just cool people. Just one piece of them were alphas, and they treated people like they didn't say like it made me a different person, and they treated everyone the same, and they were just your friends, period.
Like if we had a party, it'd be like, oh, you trying to roll to this party? It wasn't like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to ask him because he's not frat or nothing like that. It was like, we roll to this party. Now they might stroll, because they alphas, they might stroll or whatever because we had a party or whatever. But at the end of the day, we rolled to the party together. They stroll, they come back and kick it. It's not that big of a deal. But it wasn't, some people, it's Greek life 24/7. If you in it, then thumbs up. If you're not, then it's kind of like, they turn their nose up. And so just being around them, and like there was always this one common thing. Like they could do the socializing, but then you always saw them, get business professional and do the business side of it. And then with social media, I was still able to keep in contact with these. Back then it was Facebook. I'm kind of old, so back then.
What about MySpace too?
It was going out back then. It was trailing down back then. So the thing was Facebook, man. Once we got Facebook, everybody was like MySpace. And so, I was able to keep up with them and just seeing them continue to progress and everything, and then keeping in contact with them. When I got to being able to get out of school, I was wrapping up my master's, right? I reached out to one of them, said, look, I'm kind of interested in alpha, right? Well, I'll flash back. I actually expressed interest in undergrad, but I was in a scholarship, and I had to make a decision, like, like if my grades couldn't fall below a certain point, and I had worked very hard to get that scholarship. I didn't come in to UMBC with that scholarship. I had to work to get it. And so once I got it,
your top priority was education. Your top priority was your schoolwork.
So I had to make a decision there. And so once I made that decision, I was like, all right, I'm going to wait until I completely finish school. So I was wrapping up graduate school. And so my goal was to stay in North Carolina because I loved it down there, whatever. So my goal was to stay in North Carolina. This was 2009. The recession had just hit.
There you go. Yeah.
All my job offers, right, I'm getting for North Carolina, they are and this is me coming out with a master's degree. I'm about to graduate with a master's degree in computer science. The offers I was getting were less than what I was making as an intern at IBM at the time. And so that, in a sense, and back then, what was I making? Maybe 20, 22 an hour. at IBM, if that. And I was like, I don't want to seem ungrateful, but, I make more as a intern at IBM, just something could do. And it was just like, this is what we're offering. And so all the good job offers were back home.
Gotcha.
It didn't hurt me to come back home. And so I came back home. But, I had reached out and expressed interest down there, but then obviously I couldn't continue,
down there.
With my interest down there. Came home. This is how big, important connections are.
There you go. Yeah, speak it.
Once I came home, I kind of let go a lot of things. DJing, I kind of fell back on because I was really grounded and rooted in terms of DJing down there. I was a music director for hip hop at the radio station at NC State. I was doing all this DJing. I was doing a bunch of stuff, when I was down there in terms of DJing. When I came back, I just really kind of just focused on work. Kind of, fell behind. Put everything kind of to the back burner. And so my mother hit me up one time.
You okay?
She said, hey, are you still, hey, my boss is an alpha. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm thinking this is a conversation like, oh, hey, I know an alpha, and you're going to tell me all about this alpha. So I'm just like, oh, okay. She's like, my boss an alpha, whatever. She explains who he is, cool guy, but he's, she was like, it's cool guy. He's an Asian alpha. So I was like, oh, okay. So she was like, if you're still something you still want to do, I can put you in contact with him. I was living in Columbia at the time. I was in Columbia at the time.
Okay.
Because my job was out there. So I was like, sure. Sure. And so she put me in contact with him. We exchanged emails. Now in the chapter back then, it's nothing like it is now. So he put me in contact. There was Mike and maybe like 4 or 5 other brothers, and then that was it. Everybody else was over like 65.
Yes.
He put me in contact, and then I eventually, who did I get invited to? I met up with Hezron. Hezron reached out to me. Hezron was like, yo, meet me at this coffee shop. So we met down, we talked, he grilled me, interviewed me and everything. And then that was kind of it with that. And then next thing I know, I'm getting invited to their cookout. The cookout, I don't know where it was. I actually think we should have something there, an event, and then invite interest down there because it's very hard to find and get to where we were. Like the address drops you off at the end of a block where houses are. And then there are various paths for you to get down to where the picnic area is. Depending on the path you take, it could take you 5 minutes or it could take you like 30 minutes. But you don't have any other instructions. So I had to find the thing. And then they were down there, but it was only like 2 Black people down there. And so I didn't know if it was them. And so that's like was my first interaction really with the chapter. And there might have been like 8 bros out there. And then from there, that was in the summer. And then from there, Paul came and he became an alpha. I met my dean there, he took me under his wing. And, by November, I was an alpha.
That's quite a journey. And obviously the Asian guy you're speaking of was Mike.
So the Asian guy was Brother Mike Badgett.
Yes.
He was the president at the time. He was the president for a long time.
Yeah.
You think it was at least 4 years. And so, it was Mike. It was my dean, Blue. It was Hezron, Jarrett Taylor, George Falk, Otha Myers, Brother Scott. He popped in and out, every now and then to the events I was at. And Brother Reeves. And there was maybe 1 or 2 other older bros that kind of popped in and out. Brother Talmadge Williams was coming to a little couple things. And 1 other brother. But you got to understand that I was the youngest. I was 23.
I was about to say, oh man, 23. So speaking upon that, you crossed, and we're just going to fast forward. But you're 23,
right?
How did you did you feel like you hit the ground running as your first year, or was that like still young and intimidating, or what was that experience like your first year being so young and an older chapter?
So there's
and did you already like, did they already just start throwing, like not throwing stuff at you, but like saying who can do this, this, and this? And you're like, I have skills in computers and whatnot. You already kind of took charge in certain skills that you already had.
so back then, so once I crossed, there was Jarrett, who was a year over me. And then the next youngest person was Badgett at 40. And then the jump after that was George Falk. And I'm not going to tell his age, but he was older. He was either tapping the 50s or in the 50s. And then the jump after that might have been Otha or Hezron. It was either Hezron or Otha. I think it was Hezron. So the age difference was huge. And so because of that, because the chapter was just trying to stay afloat. There was only 6 or 7 active bros. A lot of the things that they needed in order to become visible, they didn't have. So take for one instance, the way they send emails is they take all the emails, the addresses, put it in the 2 box and hit send.
Yeah.
And so if you miss an email, if you got, if you add an email, somebody's using an older email list, you get left off. And so that was really brutal to see. The web page was a iCloud page that Brother Badger had just put up there just so we could have some visibility. That wasn't the Facebook. Instagram wasn't there around anymore yet. There was no Facebook page. They had an email address, and Mike kind of managed that, and that was all they had. And so no one knew really about the chapter. Everybody that ever came to this area, whether it be a brother moving around here, all they knew was Alpha Lambda. Like to them, that was the Alexandria chapter. They didn't know that there was a chapter that could be potentially closer to them in Arlington. The visibility, there was none. And then
and you're kind of speaking, and I think that's probably going to be lenient toward, kind of just maybe this topic of your influence and help with the chapter was using your skills. But like, I think that I think you were living proof of new wave of just the new wave of, I think, Alpha in general, right? Of more visibility in different ways, right? Like that you kind of came into Alpha and particularly the chapter in the influx of how important social media was, or having a website, or being more efficient with emails and communication. I don't know anyone prior how they did it way prior to us in alumni wise. I know in college they can get you in college. You're on the campus, but right. I think that visibility that you spoke about was super important, because like people, what they're going to do now is they Google Alpha Phi Alpha Alexandria, Virginia, and see what comes up, or look on the Instagram or whatever.
And follow on, if you'd have done that, all you would have got was Alpha Lambda. Like we didn't have a presence. And so I guess to go back to your original question. So when I went to my first chapter meeting, Hezron immediately gave me Toys for Tots. That was my, program that that was my baby. Actually, was my baby for a long time until this year. But that was my baby. I ran that, managed that, and everything. That's what he gave me. And so I just started to realize things in the meeting, because it was only about 7 of us in the meeting, really. For instance, they were talking about updating the chapter constitution. So I said, well, I can, if you need somebody to update it, just tell me and I can update it. I said, can someone send me a copy of the chapter? Do we have a digital copy? And they all looked around and they said, no, we don't have a digital copy. I mean, I can send you a copy. We don't have a copy in Word. So the chapter constitution you see as is, that was typed by me from hand from a copy that they gave me printed. And then I had to, make it look almost identical. I had to do the table of contents and everything. The very last page that shows you which versions did which changes, I added that. Like all these things, I started to add because it was we needed a copy to be able to modify. Like, how are we going to have a chapter constitution that we need to make sure we continue to keep updated and aligned with our fraternal constitution, but we don't have a digital version. So that copy, the copy we have now, the digital version I had typed up. That was like my first biggest thing
project
that I did. The next biggest thing was to get a chapter website.
Yeah.
And so this all happened again between 2009 and 2010. Okay. And so back then, the other chapters back then, the chapters back then was Alpha, Lambda, and ZUL. Like those were the chapters in Northern Virginia. OAL had just barely more people than us, active than us, and then we were just kind of, just trying to hang on, and so, and we wasn't getting the reclamation, as we call it, basically brothers move into the area and then they join the chapter, and we also weren't getting the interest because people looked at this chapter and there's a bunch of old people in the chapter. Don't nobody want to really come to the chapter because there's a bunch of old people, and there's no disrespect to my older bros, but that's how a lot of bros between the age of 18 and 40 think. They like, oh, I can't hang out with these people. And so by getting the chapter website up, we got some exposure, and so we started getting interests
and getting emails and getting people to message you and stuff like that.
Right.
So with this early on, when you started doing these ideas, were you met with any like, we have always done it this way, we don't do it this way? Or were you more like, wow, okay, just run with it. If you're going to do it, we're going to let you just run free with this idea.
So back then, they were just happy to have some.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, great idea, do it. Now we wanted to throw a party. I remember we wanted to throw a party at this club or whatever. And they kind of turned that down. It was like, no. And it was a good, I'm happy they turned it down too. Because now, hindsight, I'm like, yo, what? We were really trying to throw a party, invite all these people, and then we was gonna have to front the money. Were we either going to break even? Then what about the insurance? But as a neo, as young and alpha, you don't think about all that stuff. And so I'm glad they turned it down. But most of the time they just like, great idea, bro. Go ahead and do it. But if there was something, they'd be like, hold on, bro. They asked a bunch of questions. They'd be like, nah. So most of it back then was just like they were just happy to have, bodies. And so in coming in, I'm trying to think, we have elections next year. So 2011, chapter dean. And so that's when I became chapter dean, 2011, because I think they had just had elections when I had crossed. They had elections in the spring, then I crossed in the fall. So 2011, I became chapter dean. And this was right when IMDP, as we know it, for those who listen to your podcast, IMDP is the official process of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It became, and so back in 2009, it was in a pilot program. It was a pilot program. And so basically that meant they was having certain districts and areas kind of try this process out, this official process out. And it's a thick manual. It might have shrunk by now, but it was pretty thick. And so I printed it out. I remember this. By this time, Brother Kevin Glover had joined, maybe 2010. So he was here. He had just joined. And I think in 2011, he was elected vice president, I think. And so he was here. So me, Mike, Hezron, Kevin, we all got out. We came over to my house. We ordered pizzas. We went through this. Long manual. We said, yo, we can do this. All the other chapters, they backed down from it, right? So we had a line in fall 11. As you know who that line is. That was my first line. And we did it. Brother Michael Badger, he was the chief. He was in a sense the role that Brother Chuck Johnson serves in terms of intake. So he oversaw all of it. And then I was the chapter dean, but there was just one chapter. And so I'll let fall 11, you could talk to fall 11 about, their experience being the only chapter and everything. But I love, being able to do that as my first line. That was pretty amazing and everything. And then once they got here, you check the lineage, we started having lines every year, right? Because now we have this presence, on the internet, and now because we have bodies, people start to, see. And so we start having lines every year, and then we got to the point where it wasn't every year. Back then, the area was doing lines every some fall and spring. And I had a conversation with Brother Johnson. Said, "Look, we gotta have to pick," because I was the dean. And so I'm like, look, we got to make it.
You're doing a lot of work. You're doing a lot of work back to back.
Here. We hit. I'm here in this suit, for 12 hours, for 4 weeks, and we gotta make some decisions, and that's every semester, right? And so we went to once a year, and so that's kind of why we do it once a year. And now my preference is the fall. We kind of do it, so I kind of had to nudge him to the fall. But yeah, and so from that, we kind of build into what we are now, to the point we got
people actually approaching you and stuff. Yes. And so like when you said it is pretty much the infusion of younger people. Do you believe, do you see that kind of stereotype, or like certain chapters, old chapter, younger chapter? And do you think that it takes a lot of effort, as you did, to bridge that gap to, as I see, like we are still a chapter where it's an infusion. We still have some of the older seasoned brothers to still give us guidance. So we're not a completely younger chapter, but we're not a completely older chapter, if that makes sense.
We are a younger chapter. And that's my biggest concern is that like some of the people like me and Brother Lang, we're considered the old heads. We are a younger chapter. And my only thing is that I think a lot of I'm not necessarily putting it on the chapter and the younger brothers in the chapter. I think a lot of the older brothers just got burnt out, and they're older now. This was years ago. They were older 10, 11 years ago. And now the chapter is self-sustaining. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like doing other things that they want to do. And I think the switch happened entirely too quickly. It wasn't a slow or gradual switch. It was just like that. And you look up and like, the chapter, the average of the chapter went from 55 to 34. And we lose a lot of that. Well, hold on, bruh.
Speak on
why we did things like that. Yeah. And so when it becomes just me and trying to give a point of reference from why we did things back in 2009, it may not come off like it could from a brother who is one seasoned in alpha, way more. When I'm saying seasoned, I'm talking 20, 30 years, and also seasoned in life. And so I feel like that switch happened too cool, entirely too fast. And like even all we got now is what? Otha? I mean, Brother Hezron Williams passed away. Brother Reeves is older. I mean, you got we lost Brother Talmadge Williams, a couple years ago. You got to understand, like, the older our old bros that we can go to for that old
guidance.
They not there. That was here with this chapter for years. And in terms of the bros that have crossed in this chapter, active wise, I'm the longest tenured one right now in terms of active. And I'm trying to get Follow 7 back active. So that's my goal, going in there to get them back.
Was it that Facebook thing, break the line thing? You saw that? You saw that on Facebook? Don't break the line. I was like, get up, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a whole nother conversation about retention and reclamation and the different methods you can use to try to get bros to come back, because every method doesn't work for everybody. But I mean, my goal is to get Follow 7 back active, and then part of Follow 6, my dean. Hopefully, he's really busy. But if I can get them active, that'd be pretty good. I mean, because I really need bros. The chapter really needs bros that understand
the older, that seen the long term.
Yeah,
I appreciate that when I know I give you a lot of flack, but I listen to you, I listen to George, I listen to guys still younger, but it does, going to my first conferences and seeing things, like you see things from, I think you have more of a macro vision than I did. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I see it. Okay, now I see slowing down and thinking about this, and this was better than just shooting from the hip.
Right.
It's hard for shooting from the hip because you're like, let's do it. You're so enthusiastic, but you got to realize that, did you think about insurance? Did you think about optics? Did you think about, optics? How this looks to the greater public? Do you think about, can we do this more than one time? Because, you're so gung-ho about it once, but we're going to be able to do it twice. And And so I know that's hard, and I really work on it. And I've gotten way better from my first Neo year, but it's like, I think that it is, I kind of can see what you're saying about seeing it grow so fast and still being able to slow down. And that's, I think sometimes it's weird because alpha is not only a mirror of but it's also my normal work life. You know, I got a lot of ideas I want to do at Mason, but I got to sometimes think. I have a supervisor that's similar to you. That's like, yo, did you think of this? No. Like, do you think of this? No. Oh, okay. Did you think? And it's not like and not necessarily did she say no, you can't do it. But by the time I get through all the questions, I'm like, I don't know if I should do it anymore. Like, you know.
Exactly. And that's the thing that, you know, with alpha, I had to learn in alpha. Like, you can't take everything personal in alpha. Like, even I learned that by going to conventions. Like, I can vote your idea down. I cannot be for your idea because maybe it's not ready. But don't take that personal. That doesn't mean I don't like you or your idea wasn't good. It might not just be ready right now to be, you know.
Keyword is right now.
And so, you know, with everything, that's why I'm always asking questions, you know, how much will this cost? You know, will we be able to break even? Do you have a budget? And like 75% of the time, no one's thought that through.
Right.
And I've been there before, you know, ideas, everyone's excited. And so that's why, you know, after chapter dean, I became vice president and I really pushed processes. Like a lot of the processes that, you know, I'm trying to make sure we continue to do.
Like written policies, like, yeah, I see what you're saying.
The processes I tried to put in place, you know, when I was a vice president, because I saw that the chapter, when we started having lines every year, even though they were only like 1 through 3 people crossing, in addition to us having lines, we started having brothers being reclaimed through our chapter. And so, you know, Shannon Ellis, you know, so a couple of those people that started being reclaimed through our chapter, that started, the reclamation started to go up as well. And if we don't have processes in place when we grow, then when we get to 70, 80 bros, it's going to be a nightmare because we don't have processes in place that we weren't following as we grew. You know, when bros came to this chapter, when bros were made in this chapter, they understood this is how things are supposed to be done. So, you know, I always wanted to push for committees. You know, when we was 5 or 7 bros, a chapter meeting was the committee. Like, we didn't have to have a committee call or anything because
like little mini, like like I said, this actually influenced outside my life about, committees are mini meetings to bring it back to the bigger meeting so that we can kind of tighten up ideas in a smaller group. Because it's too many chiefs in a large group. So maybe the smaller group can organize to bring it back to, I see this is my instance where I see smaller committees is beneficial because it irons things out so that when you bring it up to a bigger meeting, it's not like too many chiefs talking about stuff.
So in the chat, committees are where all the work needs to be done. In a chapter meeting, only thing that needs to be happening really in a perfectly ran meeting, right? Only thing that should be happening is the committee chair should be presenting that report, right? And he should take questions. And if there's any recommendations or anything needing to be voted on, that can happen. Then, you know, you can have debate there. If the chair realizes that this is too much debate, you know,
it wasn't ironed out.
They can you can get it referred back to committee. You can, you know, you can get this, the motion can die, you can send it back to committee or whatever you need to do. And then the committee does all the work. And I remember this, and I was trying to modify this constitution. I was heated. So, you know, because I forgot what I was trying to get it updated for. I needed to be updated. This is pre all of you all. This is like between 11 and 13. I needed it updated in order to do something. And it took me 3-4 months to get it updated. I would come into a meeting and they would be like, I want this changed. I would have a committee meeting. Only one other person would call in. I would make the change. And then another brother would be at the next meeting and bring up another totally different idea. And then I would have to go back and change it. It took me 3 or 4 months. But that is how it's supposed to work. You know, all the work of alpha is supposed to be done in the committee calls. Now, if bros don't want to attend these committee calls, then, I mean, I don't really know what to say because the work of alpha should be done in committees. And it shouldn't just be one bruh making the decision and then implementing it. It should be a committee coming up with great ideas, bringing it to the chapter to be voted on. And then once it gets voted up, then the committee can put that into place and execute that thing. And the reason you want the chapter to vote on ideas and events is because in the event that the turnout isn't good, you can always say, well, bruh, y'all voted on this. I've never actually seen an idea or an event that was voted up on, like an individual event that was voted up on that didn't have good turnout. Because, everybody there is voting up this idea, which means, at least
you bought in. That's basically what you're saying.
Even if half of them don't come, right? The other half is probably interested in coming. And so
you bought into the idea and you're like, well, if I'm going to vouch for it, I got to stay up. And then, it looks bad because why would I vote for someone I'm not going to show up to? That doesn't look good.
Versus someone puts on I'm just going to throw an idea, Committee A wants to do a Lego building party, and they just schedule a Lego building party.
and no one vouched for it. So
like no one really, you could have got all the flack in the world if you'd have presented that idea at a committee, at a chapter, to get a heads up that this isn't going to be a well-attended event and it's not a great idea. But you just scheduled the Lego party and no one showed up but two interests and then two of your line brothers, right?
Yeah.
And so that's not, that's really not good, following the process. And so go ahead.
So what makes you, like, you've done a lot. Do you
Mm-hmm.
still feel like, does it feel like it's more work right now? Or do you feel like this is like, like, for me, honestly, it's still fulfilling. It's not overlapping. It's not taking a lot of mental energy of my normal life. Like, I don't feel like I'm working as a chore. I feel like this is still something I committed to because I have a side passion, like particularly like mentoring or the education piece. It doesn't feel like, oh God, I'm doing this. Like, because, from what I'm hearing from you, you did a lot of work. How do you get that part where it's like, I still enjoy this. I still get something out of it for myself, Lenard Williams. I still get something out of it for Lenard Williams rather than doing all this work. So
I'm being honest. Once I came out of being president, once the chapter, decided to vote Brother Chris Jones in, I just felt burnt out. It was just trying to find, that energy to come and do the work. I had for 9 years, of my 11 years, I have been an officer. And then for 4 of those 11, I've been a district chair. So I've crossed so many lines and things like that as chapter dean. Even as vice president, I had to cross a line as a chapter dean.
Concurrently, wow. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so that would be Brother Chris Jones' line. Brother Chris Jones, Matt, and Adam. And so when you get burnt, I didn't realize I was burnt out. I would have kept going as president. I would have been fine because I was dealing with a lot my first 2 years as president that I had no clue. I would have kept going. I'd been fine. After those 2 years, I probably would have not been president anymore. I went on to do something else. And so this last year has been trying to find that fire again because what I've noticed is that once you stop doing the work of alpha, it's very easy just to be complacent. Like, I stopped coming to chapter meetings. Like,
hey, I know, and you was on, yeah, exactly.
And so I just stopped, and so it began to get very complacent. And I talked to, and then it was at the ball. Brother Myers, we had a conversation. He just told me, he looked at me, he said, he basically said something like, just make sure that, the chapter stays on the right path and everything. And I told him, I gave him my promise, my word, I would make sure that. So that kind of just put a little spark in me to get back and involved. But I'm still trying to find that fire I had, those first 8 years.
Yeah.
I love Alpha. I love my bros. When you get 10 years in, you start going to these conventions, you start getting, deep involved. It's a lot, there's alpha politics. It's a lot. You start to see that negative side of alpha, like you just like, man, what in the world, And so. And
I want to speak upon that. Yeah. Cause how do you still find stuff for yourself? Like, what do you, cause you are still doing the work and what are you like? What are some things? And you, like I said, and we're going to talk about this as a positive way. You got Brother of the Year. That's quite an accomplishment. So now that you got that, does that like just in general, this whole thing is like, what are you almost like not saying Stella, you're Stella getting his groove back, but I don't know, I couldn't think of anything else to say about getting your groove back. But what are what would you think would be some ways to like feel like it's fun again? Or I don't know, like you said, the positive side of it.
Right. So currently, it's not like I'm just not doing nothing.
Exactly. You're not. No, you're in. You're still involved. Yeah,
so
I know
people
that.
think I know that. I'm currently the Chapter's Information Technology Committee Chair. So I oversee all of the technological aspects of the chapter with the help of a team. It's not just me. And then also I do assist the district's information technology team. So it's not like I'm just not doing anything.
Of course not.
But I don't know. It's just me really trying to figure out, what's the next thing I want to do in Alpha. I'm not sure if I really want to run. I know a lot of bros have inquired and asked. I don't know if I really want to run for any district or regional office positions. I'm not a fan of Alpha politics, but I always tell bros who ask, inquire, especially those who end up in these leadership positions. If you ask me to be in one of these positions that are appointed, I'll gladly serve. If you feel like you think I would be that person to be in that position to serve under you during your administration, I'll gladly serve. And so right now, I'm just really trying to figure out what's the next step. I mean, I'm only 11 years in the Alpha, and so coming up on 11. So I mean, I got plenty more years to go. And really trying to figure that out. I mean, I have some ideas. I mean, we'll see if any of those come to fruition. But yeah, just trying to figure it out. Just trying to figure out, get that spark and light that fire again.
Are you having fun again? Are you having fun in general?
I mean, yeah. In general, in life, life is pretty all right. I mean, right now, I focus a lot on my daughter right now. Like that's a lot of my focus is. Right now, and it was football, but obviously it's just my daughter. So those are my top two things, after, when all these responsibilities were no longer my responsibilities anymore within Alpha, I reinvested a lot of that time back into, my daughter, not to say that we weren't spending a lot of time together during this time, because if I wasn't either at a football game or at an Alpha event, my daughter was up under me. And so we definitely spent a lot of time together. And so I just really, really put that additional time back into my daughter.
Yeah, I like that.
And just, continue to build that bond with her and, give her all the attention and spoil her. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And then football has always been, something that I've leaned on, to balance me out, playing football. And, eventually as I get older, I'm out there with 22, 23-year-olds, people who played in D2 league in college now. And it's, and I'm getting slower, I don't know if they're getting faster or I'm getting slower or a combination of it. So, at some point and I'm getting hurt. So I think, I do have my, a vision of what I want to do in terms of with that, I think I'm gonna go into coaching, with flag football. That's probably going to be my next thing I do whenever I hang these cleats up. I don't know when it is. I know people who hit this 35 mark and they hit it. And it's just like, anymore. And they retire or retire. I don't know if there's such a thing with flag football.
I think you can. I had a homeboy that just kept on, he like literally tore his hamstring. He's like, I think this is a sign I shouldn't be doing softball, flag football, or any of those like community sports. He's like, I had a great time, but I'm getting hurt more than I'm enjoying it. He's getting older. But he still wants to play, just do different things or lower effort. But I don't know. I think that's great. And I think that is like, I think you spoke about it too. I probably is that the brotherhood and that focus is always been what has been attractive and hanging out and just camaraderie. But obviously politics is not fun in any arena, whether it's alpha, work politics, hierarchy in schools, politics even go back to high school when you think who was popular and who's not. That's politics.
Yeah, it does.
So politics is in fuels and everything. And, that's very hard to navigate or get away from. But at the end of the day, too, I think I try to hold on to the idealistic stuff of what it was, like having fun with friends or just the extension of friends, like and brotherhood and whatnot. So
I mean, yeah, they're with everything. There's a yin and a yang, and so
yeah.
I've had some amazing experiences. I've met bros. I've seen the true meaning of brotherhood. I've sat at a bar and had a drink with a bro that is in his 50s and then his also in his 60s, and we just all just sitting around there just kicking it. I know brothers that I've met years ago at conventions, and we only see each other at conventions, and when we see each other, it's like, we never, we just saw each other yesterday, right?
Yes.
So just those experiences and those bonds that have been formed, I feel like that is the true essence of alpha. Just being able to meet a bruh, or going somewhere, and then somebody, saying, oh yeah, he's a bruh, he's good or whatever. And then they treat me like, I've been around, forever. And so those have been amazing experiences, being able to, do a road trip and stuff like that. All these were amazing experiences, and experiences that I'm getting older now. So some of these things I don't do as often, but conventions have always been amazing to me. Just being able to see the work of alpha on a bigger, grander scale, to see, brothers be able to step up to a mic and articulate eloquently, their points, and point out issues and problems, and
in front of thousands of people. That's the crazy. That was nutty to see that confidence and just whoa. That was the nuttiest thing I've ever seen.
But that's where I've got my power from, to be able to speak out in chapter meetings. And like I don't have that courage yet to be able to speak out at a regional convention yet. I might be able to do it at district. I've done it a little bit at a district, but that's where I get my power, seeing these bros be able to articulate themselves, notice something wrong, and not be afraid to step up and call it out and say, this is not cool. I want, younger bros to be able to do that. Bros, we continue to make neos and things like that. Everyone needs to be at that point where they don't necessarily feel scared to point out something that they believe is wrong. Because if we don't have different opinions in alpha, then it's going to always be the few making the decisions that may not necessarily be good for the entire bigger body. And so that's why another thing I love about alpha is that everything comes down to a vote. And regardless if it's my idea or if I like the idea or not, I respect the vote. And so if the vote passes and I didn't like the idea, I'm gonna be for that. I mean, I'm not for that idea, but unnecessarily I'm going to make sure that we follow through with that idea. If the brotherhood says we're gonna go and we are gonna all go and then jump off, this cliff into this big lake.
Or at least the lake.
I mean, I'm gonna tie a rope to the but, it's still gonna be like I jumped off the cliff a little bit, right? That y'all, wanted to do that, so I get down there safely, right? So,
I love that. I was about to say, okay.
But that's how I be thinking sometimes. I may we just voted this up, I'm gonna support this. I'm gonna stick my head in, make sure everybody good, spend a couple of dollars on the car and everything, or spend a couple minutes here, but I'm gonna make sure I land safely, after this event, or outside of this.
I like that.
But I love that. We can sit here, we can go back and forth and debate. I don't like this idea. I like this other idea. But at the end of the day, when we call for that question, right, everything comes down to a vote. And you need the majority, and if you don't get the majority, I respect that vote. That means that there are brothers here. The majority of the brothers here either are for or against it, and we just need to move on and respect that. And it's done like that for a reason.
I like that. So then my last question, real quick: what is one of your happiest moments or like biggest accomplishments that you were like, I'm proud I did this within Alpha?
Let me think. One of the happiest and biggest accomplishments.
Obviously, it's not done yet, but so far.
That fall 11 line.
Okay.
Whew. Yeah, that was accomplishment.
There you go.
That was accomplishment. Y'all don't understand. Back then, that was accomplishment. And so, the official process for IMDP was longer than it is now back then. So that was on my first, line. The chapter did it by ourselves. It literally was like 4 of us that did it. Let's be honest. It was Brother Kevin Glover. It was myself. It was 5 of us. Brother 6 of us. Brother Mike, Brother Jared Taylor, Brother Hezron Williams, and Brother George Falk was in it. He was involved too because I think he sponsored somebody from that line. I think he sponsored Brother Marquise. So that in itself was an entire accomplishment. And then when I came out of that, I realized that if I had to point to a point that I knew that TRL could do things, and then at the point when I felt like that was the turning point for the chapter, it was that fall 11 line, because no one else in the area wanted to do intake. Everyone was like, I'm not touching this. And so we did it. We were the only chapter that did it in the fall. We did it by ourselves.
Jeez.
And then the entire area turned around and did intake in the spring. And they looked to our guidance on how to execute that, right?
Oh, first in the area in many things, huh?
Exactly. So from that standpoint, right, it was, Brother Black Badger from Theta Rho Lambda, go talk to Brother Lenard Williams from, Theta Rho Lambda, current chapter thing. They have the experience in this. So we became, and I think Brother Badger ended up being the chief dean for that spring too. And so from that standpoint, that literally was the turning point. I mean,
I like that. Yeah.
And so I don't think when I came through, I was the turning point. I mean, I just think when that fall 11 line came through, that in terms of how we've grown, everything's about putting yourself in a position to not necessarily be recognized, but to do good work, right? And, be successful at things, so that when people know that you've done those things, they can then look to you and say, get advice from it. And then through all that, that's where recognition comes from. It's not doing something to be recognized for it. It's doing something that you do, you feel like it's good work.
And
right?
do it well. Do it well. Do it so well.
And if on the way you happen to be rewarded or recognized for it,
yeah,
that's cool, but don't do it to be recognized. And so
gotcha. Yeah, I
think that being able to successfully do that and be the first in Northern Virginia and we were it was only maybe 4 or 5 chapters because that was I think that was the semester that the district was finally being able to allow to do it. So it was only 4 or 5 chapters in the entire district, I think, that was actually going through.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So I mean, a lot of people, they looked at it. You got to understand, we were coming from an official process that was a fraction of the requirements from this new, IMDP. And so a lot of bros like, I'm not trying to deal with this right now. And it was and it's only a pilot program. I'm not trying to deal with this right now. It's a lot of things.
Like other people figure it out and we'll see what they do.
Right. I got to sign the hazing form 892 times. And so it was a lot of, if you do this, then this can happen. If you do this, then you can be arrested. If you look at, so a lot of people was like, no, I ain't trying to deal with this. And so to be able to execute that, I think that, and if you go back and look, just look at, if you want, and I think this is something we really need to get a lot of the younger bros in the chapter to do. I have every chapter meeting packet going back to when I cross.
I would actually be interested to see that.
So if you look at fall 11, if you just go through them and start looking, you can start to see how we started to do a little bit more,
More names in the meetings. More names.
We're doing more things. We're starting to do more things on an area level, right?
Yeah.
And from that, we're starting to do more things on the district level, which if you look at where that turning point happened, it would be right around that fall 11 line. I mean, because if you look at everything before, you would literally just see my name, Mike's name, Hezron's name, and Jared's name, and then maybe Brother Falk's name, because I think he was the recording secretary.
Okay. Wow.
And so and it was wash, rinse, and repeat. And we just trying to stay afloat. We trying to put ourselves in a position to be bigger. But it took 2 years to do a line. And granted, I think one of those years we was in a moratorium. I remember when that happened.
So you had some things going on. Wow. So that was your proudest moment.
Yeah. That was my proudest moment, I think, fall 11, because in reality, that was kind of like the catalyst that set us to where we are now. We started having lines every year. We really, and And we actually started getting bros that want to join the chapter who were already bros. And a lot of some of these ideas that we have in place and processes came from a lot of these brothers. And some of the names in the group, you'd be like, who they are. They were bros that was a part of this chapter that came through. They was here for 2, 3, 4 years, right? And, you know, a lot of us, we know them because of that. And, you know, Brother Sean Presley was another brother who eventually came back when he moved over here and joined our chapter. So we do still have some bros, you know, back from those early 13, 12, 14 days. But some of those, a lot of them brothers may not have joined if a lot of these things weren't in place.
If you weren't visible enough, like you were.
Correct. If we weren't visible enough, right? And a lot of things weren't in place, because I just remember as chapter dean, just meeting a lot of these bros, especially a lot of these bros that was like in their 20s and 30s. They had questions like, you know, so where are the parties at? You know, what bros are hanging out? You know, what do y'all throw happy hours and all this other stuff? And I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to get a couple bros at a community service event. And granted, we were hanging out, like me and Jared, we hung out. And so there was that aspect. I would be like, yeah, we hang out. Like I'm at Park on Thursday. I'm at Park on Friday. I'm at this other spot on Saturday. And Sunday, I'm just trying to recover. Back then, you know, it was like that when I first crossed. We were out crazy. And then everybody eventually got married. Back then on that 09 to like 2013 wave, oh my gosh, we was always out partying. But we did the work. We still had to show up and do the work at Alpha. But fall 11, that I would have to say that was kind of like my proudest thing, because of how it set us up to be where we are now.
That's awesome. Well, I lied. That wasn't the last question, because we're doing our segment of our show, shot for shot. So you get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
Sure. I'll go first.
Okay, you go ahead.
So why do you do these podcasts?
Oh, okay. Well, in general, I do the podcast. I remember back in the day, I used to do YouTube videos in my car, a little motivational videos, and I would just put my phone in the tripod, whatever, and just say like, happy Monday, and try to talk about something for the day. And I realized that like me talking in front of my car was boring as hell. So I was like, let me rip the audio and ask a friend. I heard this thing about podcasts, like it's a radio show. I'd rather do that. And then I realized over time, like me talking by myself was whack too. I was like, I don't want to do some solo show. So I was like, you know what? I just like talking to people and asking them questions. And so for me, both listening to podcasts and doing podcasts is a way I learn from people. Like I learned your story. I learned a lot of things from you. I learned things from every single guest I've had. And it's like, I'm an audio learner. Like, so I'm not going to lie. I don't like reading. So what I do is I talk by talking out loud or hearing out loud. I'm hearing your stories. I'm retaining information, but then it's also just engaging for me. And I ain't gonna lie, you know, I dropping the podcast in the chats. It's also a big business card. You know, it's a way for me I've been networking with people. I'll meet a guy and say, you know what, you're really cool. Would you want to be on my podcast? Mm-hmm. And I've met like so many brothers in Alpha. I met so many brothers, or not brothers, but just people in higher ed, people that are doing things that I find interesting. You know, I'm trying to shoot my shot one day, have J. Cole on here. I said every single time, but it's like, it's just a way for me to like connect with people, ask their experience, get their information, and then just learn. I'm learning by doing this. Like, not only am I putting out information, but I'm learning from myself. I've learned from every single guest. Like I learned something new from you. I mean, not just one, I learned a bunch of things new from you today. So that's why I do podcasts. And it's better than YouTube channels because I don't want to do all that work of video editing.
Yeah, video.
Like, you know, those bloggers, man, that's next level, man, for real. Like what they got to do just to do a YouTube channel. So I was like, I mean, honestly, I know podcast is exponentially grown, but it's probably one of the easiest ways to get your voice out there, connect with people, and you don't have to wait for anyone else. Like once you have your own RSS feed, you have your own platform. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the dopest thing is. Like if you want to do a speech on a stage, you got to have someone give you a stage. Right. But if you got a podcast, I don't need nobody to tell me I could just say something, but hopefully not say something bad and get canceled. Right. I can say whatever I want. So that's kind of why I like doing a podcast. And I think that's probably why I'm going to continue to do one forever, as long as it's a platform that people use RSS feeds and listen to. And that's probably why also they've grown so much. Because I think a lot of people say, like, if I want to talk about something, I'll talk about something. And I was thinking about this the other day too. Like, if 5 people listen or 10 people listen, I'm still going to do this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it don't matter to me. I check my numbers just to see like what subjects people like the most.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started this 3 years ago, I was only getting like 20 downloads. Like, no one cared. So
Right.
it was a way for me to just talk. So I actually don't really care if I ever, I would like to grow, and I would want to be able to do more and get, guests from different walks of life. And you got to have a kind of a reputation to have them,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, my followership is this to get people. But at the end of the day, if this was where I was like this and I plateaued like this, I would still do it because I still get to connect with people.
That's good.
And I'm still going to do this every time someone's brother of the year. It's already going to be like, you're going to be on like, this is going to be a TRL tradition. I want to know why the person that's brother of the year became brother of the year and all the work they did. And so, such as yourself, you put in years of work, thus you became brother of the year. So that, and Mark, he did a bunch. His journey was so interesting too. Mark Peters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so unique. So that's why. All right, I already know my question. I already been knowing this because you already got the hat on, a Nationals hat. But this podcast is probably gonna come out in a couple of weeks. I'll release them a little bit later. Maybe it might be sometime in August. But we're still gonna talk about something right now anyway, even if it changes when we release this episode. Right. But let's talk about the Washington sports team.
Okay.
I just want to know, what is your thoughts on the name? Do you think this is lip service? Do you think this is necessary? And do you think this is corny that they just went with Washington sports team right now without a real name?
So anybody who follows the Redskins, or I guess we can't say that.
The Washington football club,
Washington football team. It's going to take some time to, it's going to take people time to adjust to not using that. And I've been doing relatively good with that. First, let's talk about my opinion on the situation.
Yeah.
As an African-American male, or African-American in general, I can understand if a word is, if a group of people feels that a word is derogatory towards to them, we should respect that, right? Mm-hmm. My conflict came in prior to these last 2 months, right? My conflict came in when it became a political thing. When I'm hearing more from, and I think to a point that was Dan Snyder's position too, a couple years ago, when we're hearing more from people in Congress about this, and we're not hearing from any Native Americans about this really. And from that standpoint, and then all of a sudden they just let it go. Like at once election season was over, you heard nothing from Congress anymore.
Yeah, what was that momentum? Yeah.
Right. And so from that standpoint, I agree. And so I always said I needed some leaders, Native American leaders. I don't know the number. I didn't have a number in my head. I just needed some to come together and say, look, we don't like this name. We would like for the team to change this name because it is derogatory, whatever, however they felt about it. We finally got that, a month ago?
Right.
And the cancel culture is real. And so by the time we got that, we were already, it was equivalent to the name already been on the ropes and falling to the ground. And because cancel culture was real, it was kind of like, and another thing, we were everybody.
But I was saying, I agree with the cancel culture, but I mean, maybe it was a long-term thing, but I think that everything has been expedited or moved faster because of COVID-19, that we have nothing else to think about.
That is correct.
So like, if someone does something wrong, we like, we're on our phones. This is the only thing we see. We're done with it. Like, I feel like it's sped up so much in this time that it could have been like something that you said was 3 years ago that has been condensed to 3 months.
You're right. And so part of me is like, I do think the name needs to change. Heard from Native Americans and everything. But this is the part of cancel culture I necessarily don't like. Are we really just hopping on the bandwagon of changing the name because of cancel culture? Or is this something we felt for years should be changed, right? Because this name has been there since the 30s. And then it's just kind of like, even if it was within the last 6-7 years, and so that's kind of where I'm like, with cancel culture, But that doesn't mean the name shouldn't change. The name needs to be changed. It's going to change. We've heard from leaders in the Native American community. I respect them. I support that. If you noticed, I used to have a lot of team
Yeah, me
things.
too. Yeah, me too. I'm getting rid of this.
I've started with the name. If I have anything with specifically the name on it, I've started to take those things down. I'm gonna put it all into a bin.
Yeah.
The pillows with the logo, I'm still holding on to those. I know the Native Americans have asked us to remove all imagery, but the name is really what's the derogatory thing right now. But the pillows will go. Once we get a new name and I can get some new pillows, those will eventually go. But everything with the actual name on it, I've started to move, and I'm gonna put it in the bin and everything. And I think it's good, because every year we were just going to hear about this, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 or 100,000. Every year, every off season, we're going to have to deal with this. And so let's just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off of it. I'm actually happy, that money talks, and
exactly.
FedEx, everybody started to threaten them. So I'm happy we're at a point where the name is now, they've retired the old name. Now you can't please everybody, and I learned that maybe 3-4 years ago when I became a vice president and started doing things on the district level and became in a true leadership positions, right? You can't please everybody. And so it's people that are now upset because they're going by the Washington football team and they feel like they spent all this time and this is all we got. Well, no, you got to understand that you were going to be mad either way. You were already mad off the break that they were changing the name. And so now you're being selfish because you want to have a new name going into the season so that you can be like, yay, this is our new name, and buy all this stuff. And give them time, right? They've had this name, the old name, for 70 years plus, I believe. 1932 is when it was, I think, established. And so you got to understand that it's okay if they take a season to be able to figure out the correct name and also get a trademark, because a lot of the issues with a lot of these names out there is that
people already snatched them up. People already snatched them up. Yeah.
Red Wolves, it's not about the trademark. It's a team. And the team wants them to pay them a lot of money every year just to use the name Red Wolves. And so you got to start weighing these things, whether it's worth paying that team every year. And what if the team wins a Super Bowl and back to back? And then the team that owns the trademark for the Red Wolves say, you know what? Let me triple that amount every year now because you're popular now.
Or they sign a limited time contract, and every year they go up to it. They're like,
right,
we change our mind.
And so you want when you make this decision, you don't want to have to go and turn around and have to make this decision again in 5 years. So I'm fine with them. We're going by the Washington football team, and they had to make a decision or figure out what to be called, because you got Madden coming out. We got the seasons coming out. Like for goodness sakes, like when I was looking at some of the stuff coming on the internet with everybody's logo for the Washington's team, it was just the NFL logo.
Okay.
And I'm just like, we've got to at least put something in place that we can say, okay, that's my team, right? And I'm all for the jokes. Bring on the jokes, right? Everything. I'm a clap back, right? You got to be, you dish it out. Be prepared to take it, incoming, right? I'm a clap back. So, but we had to have something in place, and I'm all for that. And I've seen a lot of the jerseys and everything. The Washington on the front of it, where you used to have, the old name, that thing is fire. It just says Washington, same colors and everything. And then
you can work with that. You can work if you're creative enough.
You can work with that. And so I'm happy. I don't like the owner.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, let's speak that. Yeah, okay. Agreed.
I don't like the owner, right? But I think that, he's making a lot of good decisions, or being forced to make a lot.
Let's go with that. Yeah. He's forced, but right.
And those decisions I do support. And so now he's got somebody in place that's going to oversee this. I've heard that they're going to be releasing a web portal where fans can basically write suggestions. It's going to be interactive, and they're going to be involved in the process of finding a new name. I mean, because as long as it's not a really, really whack name, I'm going to support it. I remember when Washington changed the Bullets changed their name to Wizards because Bullets were violent and DC had a huge murder rate, so they wanted to get away from Bullets. And I was like, oh yeah, and then they dropped Wizards, and I was like, what? But over time, like, it was whack. Like, our colors were like blue, and it was really bad when they dropped.
Yo, the Gilbert Arenas, that teal color was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was the name, and they had a little wizard, and it was really
Gee Whiz, whatever. That joint was terrible. Gee Whiz.
So, but now they've made it into
like Americanized, like the American flag kind of colors.
They cityized it. I don't even know if that's a word. They
with the DC logo, with the DC.
They made it something that they infused the culture of the city into the team, and we're still the Wizards, right? But like, you look at the jerseys, they're fire. Like, if you look at everything about
they're like a hybrid of a Bullets jersey.
They went back to the old colors. The
colors. So they did a rebranding. So obviously it takes just a really good team, a creative team.
Yes.
And as you say, work with what you got. And also, like, obviously, it don't matter if you're called the Washington sports team if you win. So hopefully they win.
It's not like the Washington Turtles. Like, I don't know. I'm a supporter as long as it's not something horrible, like the Washington congressmen or the
senators.
Senators, like nothing like that. I don't want it to have to do with anything dealing with the government or anything. That's not what the city is. Like, I get there's federal property in DC, but they not the ones that live here, and they're not the ones that are supporters and fans of this team. So it's got to be something that, the supporters and fans of this team can be proud of and call it its own. And, hopefully we don't have to ever change it again once we're done with this, because I'm pretty much sick and tired of the whole conversation on it. Now, everybody's moved on to something else now. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like,
it's very instantaneous in this time.
Right. It's kind of like, we, on to the next thing. Right. And so mission accomplished, right? The name is being changed. But I think it's very wise that they did not rush and just pick a name and just say, here, this is the new name. And then taking the whole season. They come out and a lot of people don't like it. They like, this is the name. I'm like, no, did you not read what they said? This is the temporary placeholder for a name. Until they can figure out, they can go through a long process to narrow down and identify a name. Because, oh my goodness, I get real-time updates about rumors and everything. I follow every Redskin media person, and just oh my goodness, the company that has the website for the www.redskins.com, right? Just, register at www.dcsentinels.com. That's going to be the new name. Like, what are you talking about? That company's just like the holder of the name. That has nothing to do. That could have nothing to do with this team. And, this guy just bought all these trademarks with, all these names. And, that's one of the ones that we want. And they keep hitting this guy up, and this guy's like, they haven't reached out to me about anything. So now everyone's mad because that's the name they want. And the team's not moving to talk to that person. And so it's, take your time, right? Take your time. And so you can handle things behind the scenes. Let football start. And while football start, you have your organization, working behind the scenes to identify that name. And it'll be okay. It'll be fine in 2, 4, 5 years. I say in about 2 years.
We won't even remember this.
People will be talking about it, but not as much. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that's why when your team was racist. I'm going to be like, but we're not racist anymore.
Yeah.
So, you see what I'm saying? Or be like, oh, your owner's still racist. This always goes on with Cowboys fans. And so it's like, you have a racist name. I'll be like, your owner's racist. And so I just think that this is good for the team. I have no clapback really outside of for Cowboys than having when they like, your name's racist. I'm like, well, So I think it's good. Now if the product on the field can get better.
So great. that was quite the conversation. We might have to do another one, NFL prediction episode one day. I'm not gonna do that now because I don't have no predictions right now. But this is the part of the show. Wonderful. I'm so glad you came on. I'm glad we got this scheduled. So the platform is yours. Shout outs, whoever you want to show love to, anyone. Show love and give them some love and shout them out. And then plugs, any way that whatever you feel comfortable with that you want the listeners to follow up with you, or anything that you're working on, anything like that. So the stage is yours. Shout outs and plugs.
First off, shout out my mama and my father, and also my daughter, Noelle. Those are my top 3 shout outs, definitely. I'm not really working on anything right now. I mean, but as always, you can follow me on social media, all of my platforms. I don't have TikTok, but I have all the.
Yeah, we're too over TikTok.
I have the other big 3. I guess Facebook, I don't count that as a big 3. But, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat are all DJ Nominal, DJ Nominal. If you want to follow me, sure, go ahead. Follow me. I'm pretty, I don't know. I'm so entertaining on Instagram. You're going to get a lot of conversation about DC sports on Twitter. I kind of limit it to that. And then whatever currently we're watching on TV as Black Twitter watchers, don't really engage in a lot of politics like that, because I don't want anybody to pull up my tweets in about 10 years when I'm leading a company talking about, oh, you supported this guy. And then it turns out that he's a racist or something. So, yeah. So, but I mean, yeah. I interact. I interact. If you had to pick one, definitely just follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there in terms of my posts and stuff. And that's pretty much all I have.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, this is great. I learned a lot. I learned some new things about you. Hopefully, all the listeners learn some new things about multiple things about processes and stuff. So if you're a fan of the podcast, please share this with your family and friends. And also, if you have a voicemail for the podcast, you can leave a voicemail at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Listen, like, subscribe, share. We're out. This is a great episode, and we're out.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.